Welcome to session 4 and the last session in the 2009 to 2014, 5 years in New Delhi. So let's start with a brief recap of the third session. So in the third session, we talked about the ward transformation project that Anita did for Ward 103, the India Against Corruption movement that we got involved in, and the advisor to HUDCO that I did. So all these are fairly interesting stories, and if you want the details, please see the previous session. So in this session, we're going to cover IIC, which stands for the International Innovation Core. Now this started with my meeting Professor Malani from the University of Chicago. University of Chicago was setting up a center in Delhi. And my son had been to the University of Chicago, and the University of Chicago knew that I had been on the founding team of PayPal, and they were trying to raise some funding for the center, so that was probably part of it. But anyway, Professor Malani and I had lunch, and we talked about how the challenges around trying to make something happen in India, and how the bureaucrats, even if they were trying to do something, but there were some good bureaucrats out there, they were hamstrung by the lack of teams. And then Professor Malani came up with the idea of how undergraduate students from the University of Chicago and the undergraduate students from Indian universities for their first job could basically form a team of fellows, and they could work with bureaucrats or CEOs of public sector enterprises who wanted to do something amazing but were hamstrung for the lack of talent. And for the students, it would be a good exposure for their first job. And this was not an internship, but it was the first job that instead of joining, say, companies like McKinsey or whatever, they could actually get some real world experience. And it also could be a good stepping stone for those people who, after their undergrad, wanted to get some work experience before maybe doing an MBA or a postgrad. So anyway, we talked about this, and Professor Malani was very interested in trying to push this forward, and we agreed to help him, Anita and me. And the amazing thing was that by the summer of 2014, that is in less than a year, we had 15 fellows on 3 projects who started off under IIC. And IIC as a program, though we sort of moved away from the program after getting it set up, they're still carrying on. And we don't know how well it's doing, but it's definitely remained in existence for at least 7 years. And I don't know in post-COVID situations whether a batch of fellows will actually work in 2020. Maybe it'll take a hiatus for a year, but the program definitely was running till 2019. So let's talk a little bit about the big, hairy, audacious goal for IIC in June of 2013. So to make IIC a reality, first thing was that Professor Malani had to get buy-in from the university. And he knew that they might buy into this program because of the center in Delhi, because undergraduate students, even from universities like University of Chicago, have a tough time getting jobs, which is why quite a few of them get into higher studies and do MBAs or take gap years. So it's not that easy, the class of graduating undergraduate class. So for them to have one more interesting option could be quite a good thing. And if, so the university would require 2 things. One is that since their name was being associated with the program, they wanted to make sure that the program was run pretty well. And secondly, that the funding for the program would not come out of university funds, but there would be donors who would fund the program. So then it was also clear that we had to arrange the funding. Now, University of Chicago was hoping that since we were excited about this and possibly since we had money, we would be the funders, but we had sort of made it clear to them that we were spending a lot of time on this and we were willing to do that, but we didn't want to put in a lot of money. So we did put in a very little amount of money, but and we were part of the funders, but the university, with our help and their own connections, had to sell this program and arrange the funding, which eventually got done. The university is very good at that, and with our help also, the funding was raised. So, one, university buy, two, funding. The third thing was getting interesting projects. So, what Anita and me were clear on was that unless there was a project proposal outline which was submitted by the bureaucrat or the CEO as to why they wanted these fellows, what would the fellows do, and that the project was ambitious and had a BHAG, then we would not really give them the fellows, because the bureaucrats or the public sector institution would be getting these fellows for free. The fellows would be paid out of the funding, but we wanted to make sure that the fellows were utilized quite well. So our best way was to actually get a project proposal outlined. Now, a lot of the bureaucrats and the CEOs, etc., had never written project proposal outlines. So Anita and me had to really talk with them, and for those who were interested, help them actually get project proposal outlines. Then we had to interview fellows. Fellows had to want to apply to this program. We had to select them. We didn't have a very big admin staff. It wasn't very clear that this program would actually take off, but we managed to. And then the other logistics, where one of the interesting things was that these were government projects and there would be American involvement. We ourselves were Americans with OCI cards. So, that whole suspicion of, is this an American plot? Are we part of the CIA? I mean, these may sound facetious, but, these are not small things, and rightly so. So there would have to be a fair amount of convincing to get visas, to get regulatory permission, etc., to launch this project. And then the thing of logistics, because Professor Malani wanted the students to spend a week in Chicago getting trained on disruptive innovation, on the projects, and so on and so forth, and then spend some time in India getting trained before they actually got onto the projects. So arranging all those logistics and things like that, getting medical for the students, insurance. The students had to find accommodation and all that kind of thing. So as you can imagine, it was a very ambitious undertaking, very audacious goal to get it up within a year, but it managed to be done. So the projects that were done in the first year of the IIC had their own BHAGs. So one was to create 500,000 new jobs within a year, sustainable jobs in textile, which was done by the National Skill Development Corporation. This is still a crying need. The project, I was a mentor, that we had a system of mentors for the projects. Because NSDC was not really very empowered in various industries, and the Ministry of Textiles, the state units, the industry, the textile industry itself were not really fully bought into the project. The project had moderate success. And really speaking, if you look at it many years down the road, this challenge of creating like incremental jobs in textiles and India growing its market share in textiles, because these jobs won't be sustainable unless there is a growth in revenue from either domestic sales of textiles or exports. that has still to be realized. So from that lens, the project really did not achieve outcomes. The second one was to accelerate new city creation through the DMICDC project. So this was the Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor project. And this project did quite a bit of work, which has ended up being quite helpful. And the DMICDC is now responsible. It has a new name. I think all the corridors, similar to the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, are now under DMICDC. And this is progressing. The speed of progress is still remarkably slow compared to other countries. But this team really worked well with DMICDC and produce some tangible outcomes, which I think have helped accelerate new city creation. But has it really moved the needle? Have the new cities started production very rapidly? I would say no. Now, in a post-COVID era, will some of these kind of things fructify faster? That is yet to be seen. The third project was to turn around a company called Central Electronics Limited, which was a public sector, which was kind of on life support. And the team worked with the units quite a bit, and it submitted some pretty good ideas. To my knowledge, CEL was not successful in implementing those ideas, and I'm pretty sure that CEL has a limited life, and it will be folded into one of the electronics public sector units and not continue as an independent entity. So you could say that that project also failed. So the interesting thing about disruptive innovation is that you can learn as much from failure as from success. And how you define success and failure is very different, could be very different. So for the University of Chicago, IIC is definitely a success. For Anita and me, probably not, right? So University of Chicago continued developing the program and continued running it. And Anita and me, we haven't really kept track of what the outcomes have been and how the flavor of IIC has changed. But we moved around, took the IIC model and said that we are more interested in metros. Now, what are metros? Metros are measurable, time-bound, real outcomes. So we wanted to say, why can't poverty be eliminated? Why can't malnutrition be eliminated? Why can't we have like renewable energy come very rapidly? Why can't the agricultural GDP, say, grow in double digits, and so on. So now one of the people who was part of IIC, her father was a principal secretary with the Andhra government. So he really liked the IIC model, and he was in touch with Anita and me and to morph the IIC model to be called International Youth for Metros. And this would be a program which would be funded by 20 corporates who would give 5 crores each and do ethical lobbying. So annually, and so annually IYM would have 100 crores and 1 crore would be given from the state government of Andhra. And these 20 people would give inputs to the chief minister. The chief minister would define 5 flagship projects, and then there would be a think tank with CEO, and a few CEO, and then there would be 5 youths, one on each of the flagship projects who would be fellows, and then there would be more youth in the districts and all over Andhra Pradesh. So maybe there would be about 60 fellows in Andhra Pradesh working on these 5 projects. And the idea would be to attract world-class entrepreneurs to build solutions for the flagship projects that the Chief Minister wanted and to achieve metros. So the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Chandrababu Naidu at that time, really liked it, and he was trying to arrange a brainstorming session But given the various priorities, that brainstorming session in detail never happened. We never really went out to raise funding, and the structure of this whole IYM was never really developed, though there was progress, and I think Andhra Pradesh did develop something similar to the Economic Development Board in Singapore, but IYM didn't take off. The IYM strawman is still alive. Maybe at some stage it will take off. So like we saw in the previous session, a lot of the work that we have done has not totally died. It's still smoldering. The embers are still alive. And maybe at some point in the future, they will catch fire. With that, that was the story of IIC and IIM. And the story for this 5 years ends here, but the story for the next 5 years, that's from 2015 to 2019, will continue. Thank you very much for listening to me.